Out beyond the western hills, past lands of sleet and snow, lies a place of calm and warmth, neath autumn's yearning glow. The people there live humble lives, the likes of which we wish we knew. But come with me there now, my friends. The pumpkins welcome you. Hello, and welcome back once again to the Kingdom of Autumn. A place of simple and sometimes strange people, hard work, relaxation, family, and friends. Today we're going to be looking in on a brand new settlement of people known as Pumpkinheads. I'm sure by this point you could see why. Now today they're going to be setting out here to create a small village hidden away from the dangerous west, a village known as Wellhosel, which for us means Umberpumpkin. Now, these Pumpkinheads here are rather industrious folk who do not shun labor when it's done in service of maintaining their humble lives. And to that end, they're not only looking to start a village, but also a small textile industry, where they're going to be producing fine clothing of both cotton and wool. You could see some sheep down there with them. And in addition to that, they would also like to produce some ceramics as well. Jugs made of clay, glazed pots, all kinds of stuff. Big ambitions for such a tiny group. And this is all reflected in Umberpumpkin's symbol, the Umbra image of pumpkins. It's an image of a pumpkin head, frilly robes, a cloth, a jug, large pots, and the velvety planter, spectral deity of music and festivals. The frilly robes are hanging from the pumpkin head, who is also raising the cloth, and the other pumpkin head is raising a nice clay jug. The velvety planter, Mengfor, above, is of course looking down on the scene with utmost joy. Such a benevolent deity, praise be to her. Anyways, as you can see, the Pumpkinheads are raring to go. Or I should say they were until they got to this place here, the Forest of Paging, because after being led here by their fearless leader, Kelsey, they've discovered quite a problem. The problem being that the Forest of Paging has no trees. At all, there's no forest in the Forest of Paging. Speaking from Kelsey's perspective, this location is called the Forest of Paging. It's also considered to be a taiga, a cold boreal forest, and is also supposedly heavily forested. That's what we were told anyways. But here we are, standing in the Forest of Paging, looking out at miles upon miles of no trees whatsoever. It's just fields, there's a bunch of bushes around, plenty of edible things, thankfully, but no wood. Now, logically, you would think these Pumpkinheads here would just pack up their wagon and continue on, but no. It looks like they're settling in. They're gonna make do right here as best they can, and I gotta say, I don't think it's gonna be easy on them at all. Having no wood means no nice cozy houses crafted from hewn timbers, no charcoal fuel for their ceramics kilns, and worst of all, no wistful sighs as the gentle breeze wends its way through the autumn boughs. But hey, sometimes you just gotta make do for some reason, right? The pumpkins are settling in as we speak, and so we're just going to be checking in on them intermittently as they make Umberpumpkin into a place they can hopefully survive in. Good luck to you, pumpkins. Okay, well, we've proceeded along quite a bit here, and as you can see, our little village is coming along. And yes, the pumpkins have not had an easy time with things. Having a look, you could see two structures here. One of them houses a small meeting house where pumpkins can go and just kind of relax or meet up, as well as a dormitory back there. Just a couple beds in there, not much. And then over here we have a new storage building going up. We need a place to put our supplies and food. Keep it out of the rain, it is raining currently. Note too that these buildings are not made out of wood, of course not. There's no wood in this forest. Instead they're being made out of sod, so we're like pulling up this clay soil here and just using that to build these houses. Gotta make do where you can, right? Actually, on that note, these beds in here, they're made out of the wagon that we came in with. Only managed to scrape up just enough for these 3 beds, and that's it. Looks like it's going to be communal sleeping until we get some more. On top of all that, over here you can see we have a little field going up that's being tended to. Realistically, we could probably just gather plants from all over the place around here, but these fields will keep things nice and centralized for now. Got a couple outside workstations here. And then over here we have a sod trade depot. Very important. This is the only way we're going to be able to get our hands on some more wood. Speaking of which, if you have a look over here, you can see the outpost liaison has arrived, as well as the merchants. It is autumn now, the time for trading, and we're looking to pick up some stuff, though we don't really have that much to offer, which is going to be a problem. We'll have to see what we can do. This here is going to be a very important yearly tradition for these pumpkins, the autumn trade. Let's see what we can get. Well, the trading went alright this year. Thankfully, the traders did bring wood. Only a few logs, really. They didn't realize we were in such need of it. Apparently, they must have thought it was a forest, too. But anyways, we took it all, as well as a few drinks and some meat. And what we traded was a bunch of clay, just raw clay that we've dug up from the earth. It's pretty heavy, so they can't carry all that much, but we still gave them a bunch. And on top of that, we also gave them some rock blocks and some clear zircons that we dug up. That seemed to do the trick, and we're going to have something better next year, that's for sure. We had better anyways, because now the outpost liaison is apprised of our situation, and I'm hoping we didn't come off too desperate, but we let her know that we need a lot of wood here. It's going to be pricey, but I'm hoping they bring more of it. We'll see. I should mention too that, yes, we traded some stone blocks this year. We have access to stone, down here in our spooky mine. Pumpkins aren't typically seen underground, but there's been some pretty big breakthroughs lately. There was a settlement nearby named Wattle Squash. It's still there, but they've been doing some digging. And so before we head out here, we learned all kinds of new techniques. Of course, I've heard rumors of caves down underground too. Sound like pretty dangerous places. Anyways, back up to the surface. Manak, our outpost liaison, gave us some news. And well, concerningly, it seems that the armies of R, a demon, have left their dark castle and have marched on Wattle Squash. It's a terrible thing to have happen. You'd never find a nicer group of pumpkins. Now, we don't know the outcome of this whole thing. This only just occurred this past summer, and it could well be that the pumpkins are fine. Maybe they had left the place, or I don't know. It's a bit concerning. Umberpumpkin's right up over here. It's a bit away from Wattle Squash and R's forces, but not that far. The point of us keeping such a small settlement is to try to remain hidden, which would be a lot easier if we were in actual forest. But hey, once again, sometimes you just gotta make do, right? And we are doing our best. Now that trading's concluded, we're gonna get back to work. Maybe trade a little bit more clay to see what else we can get, but it's not gonna be anything interesting, I'm sure. Yeah, we'll touch base again after we've dug into next year, assuming nothing catastrophic happens between now and then. Alrighty, well, here we are. It's a bit later in the year than I said. Right now it's autumn, once more, actually. And the pumpkin traders are just coming in as we speak. But before we tend to business, a little rundown of this past year's events. Let's see. After leaving off, we decided to take some time for ourselves. We had food, drinks, and a nice place to enjoy it all, so we figured we deserved it. And it was good for us too. You know, since we settled down here, we've been seeing Newell, our dyer, and Osmeyer, the clothier, making eye holes at each other. And after this rest that we had, well, they decided to tie the knot. Umberpumpkin's first marriage, with hopefully more to come. Real good to see. Also, I should mention that during that downtime we had, it looks like a few other pumpkins have gotten romantically involved as well. Iremer the miner and Airy the farmer, as well as DeHart the glazier and Kelsey, our expedition leader. This is pretty exciting, and it's obvious that this little bit of downtime was good for our settlement. Pretty eager to see how these relationships evolve. But you know, we did a little bit more this past year than just make googly eye holes at each other. As you can see, we have a few houses scattered around now. They're made of brownstone bricks produced in our quarry. Bunch of small houses, and there's 2 pumpkins living in each. It's not the best, but it's a lot better than that communal dorm there. At least I have somewhat private spots now. Each pumpkin has a bed and their own stone cabinet as well. And we're hoping to make these places a bit bigger. This is just a starting point for now. The problem with all this furniture crafting has been wood, and we completely ran out after making those beds. But luckily, not for too long. In springtime, the strangelings arrived. A big relief. The strangelings are wonderful forest folk who can sometimes be a bit mischievous, but fortunately these ones were not. In fact, these ones brought a whole slew of things, including some wood, which we're only barely able to get. Again, we traded a load of raw clay, but the strangelings don't use wagons, and so they can't really carry much of the clay. It's way too heavy for them. Still though, we were able to get a few logs, and as a little extra treat, we snagged a toad in a silver cage. And we placed that cage in our meeting hall. Figured we could use a nice mascot in there. We've named the toad Stumble. After we got our hands on those logs there, we weren't able to do that much. Still, remember we were planning on producing textiles and ceramics. And for the ceramics specifically, we need a lot of wood for charcoal and ash to be used as glaze. So with that in mind, we chose to start focusing on textiles first. But another problem arose. Cotton, which was going to be our primary textile material. Apparently cotton can't grow out here in the taiga. We can grow a whole slew of other things, just not cotton. The forest of paging. No trees and no cotton. As if things couldn't get worse for us. But all is not lost because, as a little backup plan, we brought a couple sheep with us when we first came here. Wool was going to be a supplementary thing, not our main source, mind you. But luckily we were able to pick up another ewe from the pumpkins last year, and since then there's been a few births, so our sources of wool are beginning to slowly broaden. When summer rolled around, so did the wagons of men. The humans came to trade. And they, unlike the strangelings, were fairly well equipped with sturdy wagons to hold loads and loads of low-value clay. It was a surprise to see the caravans from both the strangelings and humans so soon in our settlement's beginning here, but it was a good surprise to be sure, and one we needed. I'm not too sure what the humans thought they were getting into when they brought their fine goods to Umberpumpkin, but of course we were unable to do very much for them besides the clay, which they graciously accepted. In turn, we got a bit more wood and a few barrels of meat scraps, but not much else. Still though, we were able to request wood for next year, and we're gonna need an awful lot of this stuff if we're gonna be making proper ceramics. We can make do though, not a problem. And after all that, we find ourselves now in autumn once again, an entire year past. The pumpkin wagons are here again. We're gonna let them get settled in at our depot, just a moment, but for now we can have a little look around. First up, yes, the trade depot itself has been upgraded with some brownstone pillars and a sodden roof above. Maybe not the best looking trade depot, but it's a serviceable solution to this rain here. It rains an awful lot in the forest of paging. Another downside, looking back over here behind the field, you could see a small storage shed for seeds primarily. Good to keep them out of the way. Then back over here behind the larger storage barn, we have a work area with a kiln, farmer's workshop, and a wood burner. We're gonna get those working in earnest soon, after we attend to this trade, hopefully. Speaking of which, it looks like they are all settled in now, so let's see what those pumpkins brought for us. Hey, and would you look at that? The pumpkins really came through. Wood, and a lot of it too. That's gonna help us out. Finally, we can make some ceramic items that we can glaze and then perhaps trade back to the pumpkins for more wood next year. The humans too, for that matter. But for now, pumpkins, we'll take your wood, but all we have in turn are some soggy lumps of clay. Just take it in good faith that we will produce something more worthwhile next year. Sorry. And to that end, now that we have wood, I think it's time to get to work with that, huh? Looking down towards the workshops, we can see Oli the potter. He's already burned down some logs to make charcoal and ash, and now he's getting to work forming some clay into a statue that will serve as a nice addition to our soddy meeting hall. I let the guy make whatever he wants for the design, and I'm hoping he does something nice, something appropriate. And let's see. Ah, yes, there it is. A fine statue. A statue of pumpkin heads. Simple and perfectly apt. Sometimes these pumpkins like to get creative, throw a curveball at you, but not this time. It's gonna look great in our meeting hall, I'm sure, but before we do that, Oli has to add a nice ash glaze to it as a decorative touch. And yes, there we have it, all glazed and fired and ready to be erected across from Stumble in the meeting hall, just like that. Lovely. Hoping that this statue here will add to the experience for the pumpkins and also offset Oli's disdain at seeing Stumble over there in his cage. Apparently this pumpkin isn't a big fan of toads. A damn shame, I say. I think he's pretty cute. Anywho, looking at the value of this glazed statue here, we can see that it's worth 125, which is not shabby at all. In fact, this one statue is worth about as much as 41 hunks of raw clay that we've been trading, so this is a bit more efficient, to say the least. As such, Oli's already hard at work again in his kiln, pumping out some coal, ash, and clay crafts. All sorts of little decorative baubles. Scepters, crowns, rings, bracelets. Perfect adornments for mantles and dressers, or as lavish accoutrements on the hands, wrists, and heads of discerning city guards who seek a bit of country flair. Look at the value of this stuff too. 160 on this amulet, 350 on this crown. Man, oh man, it's gonna go over a lot better with the traders, I think. Much better than the lumps of wet clay. On that note, as for our textile industry, well, we're up to 8 sheep now total, half of which are adults and have produced some wool. Like a pretty good amount of wool, actually. We've been trying to get that spun into thread and that thread woven into cloth. And that cloth, well, we haven't really done all that much with it yet. We made a couple pieces, but we're gonna try harder this next year, I think. One step at a time. We don't want to overwork these pumpkins. I have been thinking lately of how we could get away with doing less work. You know, like if we could just produce some clothing and some nice ceramic crafts, just enough to feed our pumpkins through the year. Maybe we wouldn't have to farm anymore, but it might make us have to produce more overall. I'm not too sure. The pumpkins here at Umberpumpkin do not dislike hard work, but we value our downtime highly, as you've seen. We want to get as much of it as possible. It's going to take some figuring out, I think, but we'll get there, pumpkins. No worries. I think Kelsey's doing a damn fine job so far. Here's to success in the next year. We'll return shortly. And here we are in late autumn once again, my friends. Actually getting pretty close to winter. Another year has passed, and with it, the toils and joy that life in Umberpumpkin here bestows. As you can see, our settlement has once again grown, albeit only slightly. But before we take a look at the present day, we should have a look at the past, shouldn't we? A little quicker than that last rundown too, trying to speed things along. Well, in the spring, the strangelings arrived once more to do their sparse trading. We didn't have that much for them, but they seemed to be enchanted with our wet clay and a few armfuls of wool shoes that we tossed to them. In turn, we of course picked up some more wood, a gem altar that they brought along, and a few wooden cages as well. I thought we could try to set up some cages for the badgers that have been plaguing the area since our beginning. They're small animals, but they can be pretty fearsome and dangerous as well for pumpkins. They're so aggressive. Anyways, in addition to all that, we also picked up a pair of animals as well. A skunk and a deer. Why, you ask? Why not, we say? We tossed them in the pasture with our other animals, and they seem to be doing just great in there. Maybe in the future we can find some mates for them. Could be an interesting new way to bolster our fairly meager economy, I think. To that end though, getting our hands on these new animals made us start thinking, why don't we trade off some of the ones that we have? We had quite a few domesticated pumpkins when the humans arrived in summer, and so we caged up a few surplus pumpkins and traded them away. Just that easy. And those humans seem to be quite interested in them as well. It's a pretty good system for us. You don't really have to do much with the pumpkins, just let them graze out there. They're tough creatures. And once we get a few surplus ones, we could just trade them away for a good amount. Little effort. That's what we like. In addition to them, we also ended up trading some ceramic pieces, and the humans really seemed to appreciate the skill that went into them. And for both the pumpkins and these ceramic pieces, we were able to get a lot more wood, as well as a bunch of food too, and also a dog and a sheep. I figured we could use another sheep for wool, not gonna hurt, and the dog can help protect our flocks. Though on that note, our poor pup wasn't fated to last all too long, unfortunately. Soon after releasing her into our pasture, she was spotted dead out in a field, and there was a moose nearby. And judging by the scene, it was horrifically easy to tell that the moose was the one who caused the poor pup's demise. But I suppose that's what we got the dog for in the first place, after all. The loyal dog protected our pasture and now sits in the high heavens alongside Mengfor, the velvety planter. Rest well, pup. Also, yes, a moose. Dangerous, very dangerous. And I should mention too that although it didn't cause much trouble, we did also have a mangy old bear wander into town. And by into town, I mean inside of our storehouse. It was in there when we saw the thing, and it was spooked out by a pumpkin. It could have been very, very bad though. Like one of our pumpkins walked in there, saw the bear, and the bear went running the hell out. But that could have very easily gone the other way too. And that would have most likely been deadly for the pumpkin. It's easy to forget how dangerous things can be out here in the Forest of Paging. The wide open, sweeping, rolling Forest of Paging. No trees in sight, still. Plenty of dangerous wildlife. Regardless, life continued on here in Umberpumpkin, and eventually the year rolled into autumn proper. And the pumpkin wagons rolled into Umberpumpkin. This year they brought more wood. A lot more wood. And I'm happy to say at this point we have a decent amount of lumber thanks to all our trading. Here's hoping we could put it to good use and produce some more crafts for next year. Along with that wood though, we also did grab a pair of chickens, a rooster and a hen, again trying to diversify our animal types. And hey, there's certainly nothing wrong with some sheep cheese and pumpkin omelets, eh? That is some good stuff right there. And I mean, that pretty much does it for the year's trading. It's all out of the way now. We have a good supply of wood, food, and drinks. And as you can see, after trading concluded, we finished up work on our home improvements around here. We were kind of working through the year on it, and we only really just finished. As you can see, now Umberpumpkin has, well, the same number of houses as last year, but they've been improved. Their size has improved. They're still made out of brownstone and sod, and they don't have much in the way of fancy furnishings, but the pumpkins appreciate a little extra space to be sure. We were also thinking of making a nice little chapel somewhere too, but we don't really have any amazing plans for it yet. We'll have something sorted out before long though. Gonna have to. Mengfor be praised. And once we do get that chapel in place, we're gonna put that altar in there too. I don't know how the strangelings got their hands on it, but it certainly is a nice piece. It'll make for a unique center point of our chapel. Our pumpkins and the velvety planter will both appreciate it, to be sure. Now, aside from our building plans, one of the most exciting things going on around here currently is trying to figure out what to do with our new visitors. That's right, Umberpumpkin has some new visitors, some badgers. We got those cages set up, the ones we got from the strangelings back in spring, and almost immediately we captured a whole sea of badgers. I thought it'd take a bit longer, but these little guys must have been curious or stupid or something because they're here now, locked up in these cages. And remember, we had floated that idea of trading away some animals not too long ago. We were thinking that these badgers might be an excellent choice for export. That nearby wattle squash settlement we mentioned before had their famed badger tree that kind of caused a fad in the area for quite a few years too. But from what we understand, a few years back, those badgers left the boughs up in the trees that they had there, and they haven't been back. So the people of the Autumn Kingdom are badger starved. So I'm thinking maybe we can sort of ride on the heels of that whole thing. And to that end, if you have a look over here, you can see Kelsey, our expedition leader. Currently, she's hard at work trying to figure out how to train these things. It'd be nice if they could stop snarling and biting and all that sort of stuff. Seems to be working well enough. They're no longer wild, but now semi-wild, which is vaguely concerning, but an improvement to be sure. Kelsey's going to be in charge of the badgers for now. She is the leader of Umberpumpkin, and this was her idea, so it's going to be her responsibility. Eventually, we should have some more docile badgers around, and then maybe we could be a little bit more productive with them, but for now we've got them set up in a nice little cubby down here in our mine. Admittedly, it's not so cozy down here, but these animals could be a bit dangerous to our pumpkins if they revert to a wild state and they're very close to where we're living. So for now, we're just going to err on the side of safety, hoping this whole process doesn't take too long. It'd be very nice to take full advantage of our new friends here. We can trade away badgers, badger fur boots, badger fur coats, succulent strips of badger bacon. Bliss. Absolute bliss. Now at this point, I'd like to move on and continue on to another year, but I think I should also go over some news that we've received from the pumpkins and humans. Nothing too devastating, but remember, the armies of R were marching on Wattle Squash, that nearby settlement we keep referring to. I wasn't sure if they were destroyed or not, but I don't think they were, because we keep getting reports that the armies of R are marching on Wattle Squash, so either these armies are very small, or those pumpkins and Wattle Squash are doing a bang-up job defending against them. I don't know, it's gonna have to be left up to our imaginations for now, I suppose. Hopefully it's not that bad, and hopefully they don't find us here. That'd be some very bad news. Just gonna have to keep our heads low, pumpkins. Keep working, keep calm, and praise be to Mengfor. Another year is on its way. See you again shortly, my friends. Another year of work passed. The pumpkins, badgers, and all the rest are doing well, and as you can see, they've all been highly productive. Which is good news, too, with our swiftly growing population of, well, mostly animals, but also our little sprout. More on that in just a moment. We should probably take it from the top, shouldn't we? We'll go back to where we last left off. Well, after the pumpkin wagons left last year, the rains moved in and it downpoured for weeks. Just terrible. Now, we had a couple of workshops outdoors and we didn't want our people getting too soggy out there. So we decided to start working on a new building. A craftsman's hall. Pretty standard, really. We whipped it up in no time, and now our carpenter shop, clothier, and loom are all safely inside and away from the rains. That's good too, because we had an awful lot of clothing to make. Most of our pumpkins' clothing has been getting sort of ragged with all the work we've been doing, and while we were hoping to make a load of clothes to trade, we instead decided to make new sets for everyone in town. Wool sets for all 8 pumpkins. Now, I know we haven't talked all too much about Umberpumpkin's population, but 8 is one more than we've had this whole time. Yes, that's right, Osmeyer and Newell, our married couple, have had a child. Her name is Jackie, and she's just the cutest little gourd you've ever seen. For the time, we took Osmeyer, her mother, off work duty, and let both of them relax and take care of themselves in our hall. The other pumpkins were glad to help, of course. Here's to a new member of our Umberpumpkin family, and to many happy years under Mengfor's guidance. And actually, there might be more to come. In another bit of good news, our intrepid expedition leader Kelsey and her boyfriend DeHart have also gotten married. Might be some more sprouts to come in the future, huh? Guess we'll see. Gotta say that downtime is really doing us an awful lot of good. It's good the pumpkins are bringing themselves together like this. Of course, that one pumpkin birth was extremely exciting for us, but as I've alluded to, we've also had quite a few other births as well, mostly badgers. They started multiplying after we last left off and quickly got a bit out of hand. Currently we have 30 badgers running around, and that's all from about a year's captivity. We can see now how lucrative this business will be in the future, but unfortunately we don't have any fully tamed badgers quite yet. Even the young ones are still a bit skittish and, aggressive, but that's okay. Kelsey's been handling it all like a pro. Even if they are still a bit hostile, we could easily use their products and even trade away some of the excess for profits. It'll be nice to use their furs, that's for sure. I still got my mind on badger bacon. Aside from that, we'll just kind of skim over most of the trading we did this year, as there really isn't that much to report. The strangelings arrived in spring with a lot more to trade than usual, but we only really took the wood, some nuts, some fruits, and we gave them some clay and crafts. Easy enough, really. They seemed to appreciate it. That being said, after doing that trade, we didn't really have much for crafts left. So starting in spring, we began churning all of that lumber that we acquired last year into charcoal and ash. But we sort of went about it a little clumsily, a little heavy-handed, I suppose. We were trying to be cautious about the wood, and so it took us a bit to figure out the exact logistics, really. It kind of boils down to us being a little too overcautious, I think. We focused so much on making coal that we didn't have any actual, crafts ready to glaze or even trade away unglazed. It ended up being fine though overall. We have wood, we have food, we don't really need all that much more, with only 8 pumpkins anyways. Back on the subject of animals, in addition to quite a few more badgers, those chickens we got last year have also begun to produce a whole big family. Currently we have 15 of them. Little chicks jumping around all over the place, which is just excellent, but it looks like the local wildlife has taken notice as well. A pair of weasels were seen skulking about soon after the chick hatchings. Without a pen though, there really wasn't all that much we could do to protect the livestock except for relying on our fields pumpkin. Vicious. However, luckily, it wasn't an issue for very long. We managed to snag those weasels somehow in traps. It's strange too, because weasels don't rove around in giant groups like badgers do. I didn't think we'd ever catch them, but we did. And not just 1 or even the 2 or even 3, but 5. Somehow we caught 5 weasels during this last year, and Kelsey has begun to train those as well. Now, we don't have a nice spacious place for them like our mine-bound badgers, but we do have them all stuffed into a cage within our meeting hall, which isn't better. I mean, it's pretty miserable, but it'll suffice. We're hoping to get more of these things too. We won't be able to butcher them like we do with badgers just because they're tiny, they're dinky little things, but we could perhaps trade some of them away. Weasels are pretty easy to keep, though they don't live for very long. But yes, trading them away as pets might be nice. Gotta keep our options open. Speaking of which, when the human caravans rolled in, well, they brought some animals too, and we didn't really trade all that much with them, as I said before. But one item we did manage to snag was a big old bear that they brought in, which is pretty cool. Just one bear, a big old male, seems like a sleepy fellow. We have him in his cage, and we got that cage set up in our meeting hall. We figured that'd be apt. Again, gotta keep those options open. Maybe we can get a female in the future. That'd be very interesting. Now, sometime after the human wagons left, the pumpkin head wagons rolled in. Autumn was already setting in, and we here at Umberpumpkin were beginning to update our meeting hall. The old sod hall was suitable for our needs, but we knew from the start that it'd have to be fixed up one day. We had considered going with proper fired clay bricks for construction, but that would have taken far, far more fuel than we can afford even now. So instead we went with brown stone, like the other houses in town. It took a little bit to get the stone cut up and brought up out of the mines, but overall it wasn't too bad. Ended up taking about 3 or 4 months to get the walls taken out and replaced, and also to get the roof above redone with fresh sod. Right now in the present, you can see that the hall is completed and the pumpkins are already appreciating the product of their labors. We did mention earlier the idea of making a new chapel in town, but we decided against making it its own separate building and have instead turned our main hall here into a multi-use structure, a chapel and a meeting hall. And yes, it is complete now, and you can see the blue garnet altar we got from the strangelings up near the western side, along with that glazed statue we had originally made. And then over on the east we have our original tavern setting still in place, the tables and chairs and animal cages. I suppose it does seem sort of odd and, well, claustrophobic to have all this stuff crammed into a single relatively small building, but it does get the job done, doesn't it? Might have to make a separate menagerie building or possibly a nice garden area for our animals at some point, but for now, yes, this will suffice. Well now, pumpkins, it seems to me that your settlement here is safe, comfortable, and reasonably productive. Not bad for a settlement without access to wood, just now approaching its 4th year, I say. As for how you'll do in the future, well, I think we could say you pumpkinheads will be just fine. Excuse me. You pumpkinheads, badgers, sheep, chickens, weasels, deer, bear, and toad will be just fine. Enjoy the fruits of your labor, and as always, remain wary for those forces of R. We don't want to end up on the receiving end of those devilish pitchforks now, do we? No worries, though. For now, relax and be at peace. The year draws to a close, and we've all worked very hard. Okay, we're actually going to add a little addendum to the end of this episode here. Just talk about some behind-the-scenes stuff. I'm not going to have any fancy art popping up on the screen. Maybe just some pictures I did for last year. Just kind of an explanation for, the episode, maybe some stuff that happened that I didn't want to cram into the episode, that sort of stuff. Well, first off, the forest of paging. Without a forest at all. No trees at all. I thought that was very funny and surprising. I don't know why that was. I've never seen a forest without trees. It's hard to say if that's just a feature of this mod here, maybe a bug of some variety, or yeah, I'm not too sure. Regardless, it did end up working out, and it was a interesting challenge. I'm sure I didn't make it look all too challenging throughout the course of the episode, but it was a pain. Having to disassemble the wagon for beds and stuff, I don't know. It's a hassle, but yeah, ended up working out just fine. Something else I noticed is the variety of animals. Like, in the grand scheme of things, I know that this mod here is it's a low-key mod. I mean, it was made by Squamous. More on that in a second. But it doesn't seem like there's a great variety of stuff out in the world in the Autumn Kingdom. Mostly just animals. And not like typical Dwarf Fortress either, where you can see like a huge variety of animals like crocodiles and coatamundis and like panda and that sort of stuff. It's mostly like stuff you'd expect to see in a temperate, maybe European, New England sort of a setting. You got your badgers, your bear, your deer, that sort of stuff. I do like that for the vibes, but I am also curious what else is out there. I know down in the caves there are some other things, but I don't really know to what extent. You'd think I would have picked around in this mod a little bit more at this point, but I've really only ever played it to make these episodes, so you've seen all I know pretty much. Which is cool. I like that sense of mystery, even if there isn't really anything else out there. Makes you wonder if there is, As for Wattle Squash proper, yes, I mentioned it a few times in this episode, and this is the Autumn Kingdom from last year's series I did. And Wattle Squash is right over there. And just so I don't leave you hanging on the whole thing, I did check in on Wattle Squash to see how it was doing. I unretired it, and well, the place was a mess. All the items were scattered all over the place. I kind of wanted to resume play in Wattle Squash originally, but it really is kind of a bummer when you unretire an old place and all the items are just thrown all over the place. Like the entire map was just strewn with logs and clothing and scrolls. It was just stuff all over. Plus there was a bunch of new faces in town too, which I was unfamiliar with. There was a huge group of merchants there who, I'm unfamiliar with, and I don't know, it would have been awkward for me. It was cool to see that the place is still there though, even after those attacks that it experienced, which really seemed to have very little effect. It seems that old White in there and his gun have been fending them off very well. But maybe they received some help from that adventurer witch that we saw last year. Remember that character? Just right at the end. Daloop was the name. He wandered in and read that slab there and became a witch. Gained some magic powers. And if you look at the story in the grand scheme of things, he really just wandered into town, read the slab. We thought he was up to some sort of trouble. It certainly looked that way at the end of last series. But he just kind of settled down after that. He became a witch and he now lives in Wattle Squash apparently, so apparently he wasn't up to any trouble at all. He just wanted that information. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, so perhaps he and Whiten have been fending off bogey attacks. Kind of a cool possibility, really. Also, another face I was surprised to see in town was Scored the Pumpkin. I think he was exiled last year, wasn't he? Because of his troublemaking? Well, he's back now. It was good to see. I mean, he wasn't happy. He's not happy at all, but he's still there. Anyways, that's our Wattle Squash update. And I'm sorry I'm not going to be doing a full series this year, but I mean, we don't really have to, I don't think. I think a one-off episode's just going to be fine. Just enough to get those comfy vibes, Though there's always a possibility of next year. I'd like to do another one-off. And, I'm not too sure what I would do for it. we could do another comfy thing. I don't really want to play in water squash again, but I'm thinking maybe Umberpumpkin would be a good possibility. The town itself is so much smaller that even if items did get strewn all over the place, that like it wouldn't be an issue, you know? It's very little to clean up. Also, I thought it might be cool too to like maybe play the game a whole bunch this like the next year without showing you guys, and just we could see how things progress by the time next year comes. I don't know. I don't want to say I'm going to do that, but if it strikes me, I might. We'll see. Also, I guess we could like do an adventure mode one-off too, and maybe like take control of Daloop the Witch. Maybe go explore R's Citadel and the bogies there or something. Or I guess we could even like take control of another pumpkin civilization. There are 2 pumpkin civilizations in this world. It might be cool to see how the other one differs from our current civilization. In reality, I'm sure it would be almost exactly the same, but we could draw them differently or play them differently. I don't know, a lot of possibilities. Maybe put some thought into it. Write your ideas down below. Love to see what you think we should do for next year's episode. Also, I gotta give a big thanks to Squamous for putting this mod together, the Autumn Kingdom mod. You can download this mod here on the Dwarf Fortress File Depot. I'm gonna have a link to that down in the description below. And I'm also gonna have you look into Squamous's Patreon, where you could just give the guy a, maybe $1 or something if you enjoyed this video, or if you enjoyed playing his mods. There's a whole bunch of mods. Go check them out. They're all very, very good. Modding in Dwarf Fortress adds an entire world of possibilities, and it's just great when somebody can do that sort of stuff. I am almost entirely incapable of doing any sort of meaningful modding, so a proper modder is a real freaking treasure. Thank you once again, Squamous, and thank you out there for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and, well, I hope to see you next time, my bearded bastards. And until then...